The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Chapter 12. The Search for the Wicked Witch. Part 2. Some of the winged monkeys seized the Tin Woodman and carried him high through the air until they came to a region filled with sharp rocks. There they dropped the poor woodman, who fell a great distance and landed so badly crushed and dented that he could neither move nor utter a sound. Meanwhile, others caught hold of the Scarecrow and, with their long fingers, pulled every bit of straw from his body and head. They bundled his hat, boots, and clothes together and tossed the bundle into the top branches of a tall tree. The remaining monkeys tossed thick ropes around the lion and wrapped coil after coil around his body, head, and legs until he could no longer bite, scratch, or struggle. Then they lifted him into the air and carried him to the witch's castle. There they placed him in a small yard enclosed by a high iron fence, making sure he could not escape.
"I can't run away."
But the monkeys did not harm Dorothy in the least. She stood holding Toto tightly in her arms, watching her friend's terrible fate and fearing that she would be next. The leader of the winged monkeys flew up to her with his long, hairy arms outstretched and his hideous face twisted in a grin. Yet, when he noticed the mark of the Good Witch's kiss glowing on her forehead, he stopped suddenly and motioned to the others not to approach. "We dare not harm this child," he said. "She is protected by the power of good, which is stronger than evil. All we may do is carry her to the Wicked Witch's castle and leave her there." With great care, the monkeys lifted Dorothy in their arms and carried her swiftly through the air to the castle, where they placed her gently on the front doorstep. The leader then spoke to the witch. "We have obeyed your orders as far as we could. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow are destroyed, and the lion lies bound in your yard. But we dare not harm the little girl or the dog she carries. Your power over us is ended now, and you will never see us again." With loud laughter and chattering, the winged monkeys rose into the air and quickly disappeared from view. The Wicked Witch was startled and uneasy when she noticed the mark on Dorothy's forehead, for she knew well that neither she nor the winged monkeys dared harm the girl. Her eyes then fell upon Dorothy's feet, and when she saw the silver shoes, she trembled in fear, knowing the great power they possessed. At first, she was tempted to flee from Dorothy, but when she gazed into the child's eyes, she saw only innocence and realized that Dorothy had no idea of the shoe's magic. Smiling slyly to herself, the witch thought, "I can still make her my slave, for she knows nothing of her power." Then, in a harsh and commanding voice, she said, "Come with me and obey everything I tell you. If you refuse, I shall destroy you as I did the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow." Dorothy walked after the witch through several grand and beautiful rooms in the castle until they reached the kitchen. The witch ordered her to clean the pots and kettles, sweep the floors, and keep the fire going with wood. Obediently, Dorothy began her tasks, resolved to work as hard as she could, for she was grateful that the Wicked Witch had spared her life. While Dorothy worked, the Wicked Witch decided to go out into the courtyard and harness the Cowardly Lion like a horse. She thought it would amuse her to have him pull her chariot whenever she wished to take a drive. But the moment she opened the gate, the lion let out a mighty roar and leapt toward her with such fury that she grew terrified, fled, and slammed the gate shut behind her. "If I cannot harness you," said the witch to the lion, speaking through the iron bars, "then I will starve you. You shall have no food until you obey me." From that time on, she brought him nothing to eat. Each day at noon she came to the gate and called, "Are you ready to be harnessed like a horse?" And the lion always replied, "No. If you ever step into this yard, I'll bite you." The lion was able to resist the witch's orders because each night, while she slept, Dorothy secretly carried him food from the cupboard. When he had eaten, he would stretch out on his bed of straw, and Dorothy would lie beside him, resting her head against his thick, shaggy mane. Together they spoke softly of their troubles and tried to plan an escape. Yet it seemed hopeless, for the castle was always watched by the yellow Winkies, the witch's frightened slaves who dared not disobey her commands. The girl worked hard all day, and the witch often threatened to beat her with the old umbrella she always carried. Yet she never dared to strike Dorothy, for she feared the mark that glowed upon the child's forehead. Dorothy, not knowing this, lived in constant fear for herself and for Toto. Once, the witch actually struck Toto with her umbrella, and the brave little dog leapt at her and bit her leg. But no blood flowed, for the witch was so wicked that her blood had long since dried up. Dorothy's days grew very sad as she began to understand how difficult it would be to return to Kansas and to Aunt Em. Toto didn't care whether he lived in Kansas or in the land of Oz, as long as he stayed by Dorothy's side. Yet he could tell she was unhappy, and that made his little heart ache as well. The Wicked Witch greatly desired the silver shoes that Dorothy always wore and longed to make them her own. She watched the girl constantly, waiting for a chance to steal them if ever she took them off. But Dorothy was proud of her pretty shoes and removed them only at night or when she bathed. The witch, being terribly afraid of the dark, never dared enter Dorothy's room at night, and her fear of water was even stronger, so she kept far away during bath time. In truth, the old witch never allowed water to touch her in any way.
"I'm afraid of water."
The Wicked Witch was cunning, and at last devised a clever trick to get what she desired. She laid a bar of iron across the kitchen floor and, through her magic, made it invisible to human eyes. As Dorothy walked through the room, she stumbled over it and fell flat to the ground. Though she wasn't badly hurt, one of her silver shoes slipped off, and before she could recover it, the witch had snatched it and slipped it onto her own bony foot. The wicked woman was delighted that her trick had succeeded, for with one of the silver shoes she possessed half the power of their magic. Dorothy could no longer use them against her, even if she had known how. When the little girl realized that one of her lovely shoes was missing, she grew angry and demanded, "Give me back my shoe." "I will not," snapped the witch. "It's mine now, not yours." "You're a wicked creature," cried Dorothy. "You have no right to take what belongs to me." "I shall keep it all the same," the witch said with a mocking laugh. "And one day I'll have the other shoe as well." Dorothy grew so furious that she seized a bucket of water standing nearby and flung it over the witch, drenching her from head to foot. Instantly, the wicked woman let out a terrible cry of fear, and before Dorothy's astonished eyes, she began to shrink and dissolve away. "See what you've done!" shrieked the witch. "In another minute, I'll melt away completely." "I'm so sorry," cried Dorothy, frightened as she watched the witch dissolve before her eyes like brown sugar melting in water. "Did you not know that water would be the end of me?" moaned the witch in a despairing voice. "Of course not," said Dorothy. "How could I have known?" "Well," the witch said weakly, "in a few moments I shall be gone, and this castle will be yours. I have been wicked in my time, but I never dreamed a little girl like you would melt me and finish all my evil deeds. Look out, here I go." With these words, the witch collapsed into a brown, shapeless puddle that spread across the spotless kitchen floor. Realizing the witch had completely melted away, Dorothy fetched another bucket of water and poured it over the remains. She swept the mess out the door, then picked up the silver shoe, the only trace left of the old woman. After cleaning and drying it carefully, she slipped it onto her foot. At last, free to act as she pleased, Dorothy hurried to the courtyard to tell the lion that the Wicked Witch of the West was no more and that they were free again.
"I'm coming,"